Good evening, everybody. It's Monday, May 31st, 2021. My name is Mike Langford, and welcome back to another episode of DearBands Live, the podcast that explores the paths and stories of career-minded artists and music industry professionals. My guest tonight, drummer for rock band One Bad Son, who've had a string of top 10 singles at radio, including a #1 in Canada with the song Raging Bull. He's written a number of music industry articles for publications including Canadian Musician, Drum Magazine, SOCAN Magazine, and Vice Magazine. Served on the board of directors as president of SaskMusic for the last 6 years, and have also recently been recognized as an industry leader in entertainment law by Canadian Lawyer. That's right, lawyer by day, drummer by night, then likely back to lawyer later that night. His life is music, and the music industry is what he knows. Please welcome my guest tonight, drummer and entertainment industry lawyer, Kurt Dahl. Kurt.
Hey, Mike, that was a great intro, man.
Thank you.
That means the world, man. Thank you. Appreciate it.
There's a lot to fit in there.
Well, I try to keep it simple, but
you are a busy individual, because you go through your bio and it's just, there's so many, we'll get into it in a bit, but there's a lot you seem to be juggling.
Thank you. Yeah, it's I'll say this, every day is an adventure,
I would not doubt it. How things have been? What's new? What's going on?
Things are good. I want to just start today, Mike, by just acknowledging that I'm doing this interview on Treaty 6 territory here in Saskatoon and the traditional homeland of the Métis, and it's a real honor and a privilege to be, to live here, work here, and raise my kids in this land. And and I'm wearing orange today, and I think many of you at home know the reason why. And we're just it's a small gesture for a very, very, very big thing. And when this news broke over the weekend, I debated calling you and saying, hey, we should postpone this, but then I thought, I think it's good to also share the message and share our voice on this sort of thing,
No, I think there's a platform, use it.
Yeah, totally. It's just been what a horrible tragedy, and it's like I get so disgusted, it's sickening to hear of this, what's happened in our country right in front of us, and it's not history, it's happening still, right? And anyways, I wanted to just start with that, because I feel like that's just been so heavy on my mind every minute of the last, since I heard about this over the weekend.
No, I appreciate you bringing it up, and I appreciate the way that you put it too. So we did notice the flags are half-mast around here. Did notice that as well.
Yeah, as they should be. It's crazy. Yeah, it's really just, it's so, yeah. Anyways, I think we could fill an hour with that just to scratch the surface, but otherwise things are good, man. Things are busy, but I feel like these days everyone says they're busy, and I feel like it's almost a badge of honor to be busy. And I don't agree with that. I feel like I'm busy with things. I'm busy with shit that I love, Can I swear on this? Can I swear on this?
Absolutely.
Yeah. You paused there for a second. I was like, oh God.
It's all good.
No, being busy is one thing, but you gotta be busy with things you love. Otherwise, what's the point? You one day you die and you're gone, and you're just busy with things you don't love. Then what the hell are you doing it for, man? So I'm lucky I'm busy with things that I absolutely love. So that's a summary of where I'm at.
Well, yeah, we've all got, hopefully we've all got things that get us out of bed in the morning, and that's the way I think we look at it. It's just what are we excited? What are we energized to get up and get at every day? But again, going through your list of accomplishments and just what you've got on the go these days, I have no idea what your agenda looks like, and also just making time to chat about this. And again, I just want to hear more about your background as well, how you got into music.
Yeah. No, it's my pleasure, man. It's kind of because I remember Joe Walsh said this thing in the Eagles documentary. I love Joe Walsh, you can't often understand what he's saying. He's kind of like a Keith Richards in that way, but what he does say, what you can make out is just gold. He's a sage, a rock and roll sage. He said there's a philosopher that said this, an old Roman philosopher or something said this, that life, when you're in the middle of it, like in the middle of the craziness, it seems like it's all just anarchy and chaos. But when you step back years later and look back at that crazy busy time, it looks like a beautifully written story that had a great plan the whole time, right? And it's kind of similar. I didn't really set out to be this like lawyer drummer dude, that gets to balance two careers that I love, but and there was times when neither career was happening, right? Like there's a time, if we go back to like, say, when I graduated law school and became a lawyer, and like, even before I became a lawyer, like I graduated law school, didn't become a lawyer right away, decided to tour the country with One Bad Son. But the only thing is, at that time, we weren't that good. It was the early days. Our songs sucked. Our live show sucked, and no one cared about us. So it wasn't our time, right? And so we toured the country, drove 30 hours to Thunder Bay to make a couple $100, and it just wasn't working, So there's I guess what I'm saying is there's a lot of years where sort of like the dark years where it wasn't happening. Neither career was happening. And now I just feel so damn lucky every day because both, I've got two careers that I love, and both are really happening, and aren't I lucky?
Well, I could dig into that further, but I think we'll get there. Starting out as a musician, when did you start playing drums? And are the other instruments you play as well, or?
I played guitar really poorly before I found the drums. So like I told people that I was a guitar player, and I had this shitty acoustic guitar, and I could play like the riff to Smells Like Teen Spirit and made a little bit of Alive by Pearl Jam, but I could do it really poorly because it's a bit more intricate. But yeah, so I was kind of a late bloomer in terms of rock and roll and in terms of being a musician. A lot of people you hear people that start when they're like age 5 or like whatever, their dad gets them into it. For me, like I picked up the drumsticks in grade 12. So like high school is almost over. I'd missed that window to be a musician in high school and be cool for it. I should have jumped on it earlier, but picked up in grade 12. And then as you can imagine, like almost without exception, like you start an instrument and you suck at it. Like that's just Nate. That's how it works, So I picked up the drumsticks and sucked, and I was like, oh, but I didn't care. I just loved it. I bought these Vic Firth studio cans that I could plug into my record player, like my vinyl player, and I would play along to records. And like, I didn't do lessons because lessons seemed boring, and like to do the stuff that they teach you in lessons, like it was hard, right? So it was hard, so I didn't do it. I was pretty lazy that way. So, but what was fun was plugging into the record player and putting on the Who or Led Zeppelin or like, and those were actually difficult because those are the two greatest drummers of all time. So it was not the best place to start, but I remember putting Ziggy Stardust by David Bowie was a good one because it was like the drums were good. Like I still think it's a great drummed record, but they're easy. Like the beats are easier. So Ziggy Stardust, I'd play to that every day. And that's something I was not lazy at. I would play to the record player like hours and hours a day. And then those turned into weeks and months and years. And, you fast forward 5 years of working by myself to learn drums, and like I could move on to like Led Zeppelin and the Who. And I was all of a sudden not so crappy of a drummer, and then it just sort of it blossomed from there. Like I've always loved to be a performer. So I think once I got in front of a crowd, then I was just like, okay, like I want to do this, So yeah.
That when you're talking about putting the headphones on and playing the music, that is the number one. That's the way that I learned. Like I learned with like Pearl Jam and Soundgarden and Weezer and stuff. But the thing is, the thing about learning that way, especially with drums, it's like you learn the actual drum beats that make it into songs.
Yeah.
Like one thing on other instruments to like learn how to shred or do cool licks and stuff like that. But it's like when you learn actually how to play the song and listen to how it comes together, there's something to be said about drums being able to, you can learn that way. You can be not a great drummer and just bang along to the songs and get time and learn groove and stuff. And it's a great way to learn. I remember when I did take a few lessons when I was younger, but my teacher was like, "Are you going to go through school for music?" I'm like, "Probably not." He's like, okay, let's teach you how to sit so that you're not going to wreck your back and wreck your hands. And I'm like, okay, so that was good advice, just the form that way. As far as getting into bands, do you remember your first band?
Oh yeah, like very well, because they're still friends. They're still friends of mine, and like we found some real success in Saskatoon. So the band was called The Mother Culture, and it was sort of like a mix of like it was original stuff, but we threw in some covers. But the music was sort of like inspired by like the Chili Peppers, who just released Californication around that time, '98, which we loved. And then, Chili Peppers kind of with a bit of Pearl Jam and Led Zeppelin influences thrown in. And, we were getting some traction. Like we'd sold out our big university bar here at like 400 people. And so it's like, holy, we're selling out 400 people. Like, so we got a lot of press and then, we're all 19 and stuff. And they, as bands do, we just imploded. Like it was, once you start to have success, that's when, sometimes shit hits the fan, and that's what happened. And then, I had this other band called the River Boys, and it was kind of like, even though the name sucked, the band was actually really good. And ironically, the guy in River Boys the main guitar player was Tim Murphy, who is now the guy. He's like the founder of the law firm that I'm at. So we've been friends forever, and he's like, you should come join my firm. And so it kind of came full circle. And then One Bad Son formed in 2004. So it was like, I was in the middle of law school. All I wanted to do was be a rock star, like I didn't want to be a lawyer. I wanted to be a rock star. And so formed OBS in 2004. And it was like, I thought we were going to become rock stars within like 6 months or something, like I thought it was like, and it turns out it took us about 8 years to have our first real breakthrough. But that's the story of the music biz. It's all about the long haul, right?
How did One Bad Son come together?
So Shane knew of me from the Mother Culture, because again, we were kind of a big band in the city, and I knew of him he was in a band called Full Tilt, another shitty band name, but I always thought like, so our singer in Mother Culture was like, he sort of quit the band, or the band kind of broke up. So we were sort of scouting Shane to be our singer, and he came into the restaurant that I was serving at. So I served at restaurants all through university to pay the bills, and he came in, and I was like, he was on a date with his girlfriend at the time, and I served them, and we just started talking music, and I was like, man, we should join a band together or start a band. And like, I totally like ruined his date. Like he and I just talked music for like the whole evening. I think the girl like left, and that was their last date, but, and then like the next day I called, this is pre-email, like pre-texting even, I think. I just called him. I was like, dude, let's start a band. And that was that. And, we were, like at the time, it all seemed to make sense now, but at the time it was like, I had no clue what we could achieve. It's just, I knew he could sing great, and I knew that we could make some good rock and roll together,
I think that's a hilariously awesome story, where just that you thought crossed your mind, you know what, I'm going to take the chance right now. Let's chat about band stuff. Let's chat about music stuff. No, you just got to take the opportunities when they're there. Saying that you thought it might take about 6 months to get a band like really rolling, and feel like it took 6 or 8 years to really get rolling. What was that development process like?
In terms of like, how did we get?
Because everyone's always got a plan, and then you start executing the plan, and you usually start modifying the plan. And
it's interesting. I think looking back, if I wasn't so naive, like, I was always a dreamer, I still am in a lot of ways. Like, every day it's like, I'm always just like an optimist and a dreamer and all that stuff. I mean, maybe now it's more, I'm 40 now, so maybe it's more like I've got a stronger grasp of what's also reality. But when I was 20, I was like, I just thought I was like, let's move to LA. I said at one point, and Shane's like, what? I was such a dreamer and quite naive, I think, in terms of how tough it is to make it in the music biz. But if I didn't have that, though, I don't know if I would have, hung out for, or like toughed it out for 8 years to have that first breakthrough, you know? And I think for us, the key was we had to really, like, some bands get together and they just have their sound right away and they can write songs amazingly right away. To be honest, that was not OBS. Like we sort of had this sort of toxic, or not toxic, like sort of this, strange brew that we like, that of all these chemicals kind of combined to make this something magical. But we all had very different tastes too. Like at the beginning, you know, Shane was into just really heavy stuff, and so was Hicks. And I was coming to the table with like Led Zeppelin, The Who, Hendrix, you know, and so, but you put that all together in a pot and sort of like let it steep for a while, and eventually you get the OBS sound, but it took that time. So the first record we made 3 different records really before we got signed to a deal. You can sort of hear the potential, but it's not quite there. Like the ingredients are there, which didn't know how to make the right recipe. You know what I mean? So to your question, Mike, I mean, I always knew we could get there, but it didn't come naturally. Like it took time to sort of find that thing that made us us. And then we also had to like learn from the greats, like learn from the Rolling Stones, how to write a cool rock groove, and, you know, learn from Alice in Chains how to write a heavy song that also like you can kind of dance to or groove to. And yeah, so it took time. And that's what I say to young bands. Like, you know, again, I naively thought that we just get a record deal in like 6 months, and, you know, it takes time. It took 10,000 hours, I would say. We actually did put in the 10,000 hours, because we lived together in a band house too. We had the OBS band house, and it was, I wish I still had photos of it. They tore down the house because it was like condemned. It was so old. And, we probably helped make it condemned because we didn't really keep it very clean, you know, but, you know, we jammed every single day. And for a while there, none of us had jobs. Like we kind of have odd jobs because we just wanted the band to make it. So we jam every day for like 3-4 hours a day. That's how we got, to answer your question, from like being a decent band to like having some sort of thing that separated us from everyone else.
Just committing and kind of living it.
Yeah.
I think that the band house thing, it's not a bad idea for any bands and artists that are that are listening. It's like, it's not a bad idea to have a home base for your band. So you can rehearse there, you can keep your merch there, you keep your van and your trailer there. Like there's just lots of things that you can kind of figure out, and, you know, rent a house and it can take care of a lot of it.
Yeah. And then you have to make sure someone or everyone does their own dishes, you know, like that's because we live there. Like we live there. Like it wasn't just a place to jam and stuff. Like it's actually where we lived. And then everyone's got girlfriends, and there's a lot of details you have to work out in terms of like living together. But the one thing was like, just do your effing dishes, you know?
It's funny because as soon as you said that, and not naming any names, but as soon as you said that, I started thinking you learn so much about your bandmates when you tour with them. And the idea where like, if you were living together, like you'd learn a lot about them before you go out on the road. Because sometimes you really don't get to know people until you're like in a van with them for hours, like days and days and weeks and months on end. So there's a bit of bonding, and just, you know, you can kind of figure out if things are going to work when you're in close quarters and you have committed to having the band house. So I think it's a good idea.
Well, and you hit the nail on the head, Mike. Like what I found, I think, and this sort of relates to your other question, like what was the key for OBS? The key was we didn't start off like all virtuosos at our instruments or whatever, right? Like, but we were all brothers, and that was the key, right? Like we became bros, we all got along, and I mean, most of the time, but we just were bros first, and then we became really good at our instruments after, almost, you know, like just like the Rolling Stones, for example. Like none of them are like virtuosos. Put them together, and there's something there that's just magic. And you know, I think we had that brotherhood, and that's where we could sort of create the foundation to really find our sound, and then the breakthrough came after that, you know.
Oh, for bands, chemistry is key. I remember one band I saw years ago, and they just got back on the road. I'm not going to name any names, but they had 3 buses between the 5 members. That's what allowed them to get back on tour again. So they could do it for work, but the idea of them getting back in a bus together, and just like
they couldn't do it.
It wasn't going to work.
I wish we never could afford a bus, or let alone 3 buses. So we didn't have that luxury, like we're all together. But
talking about the path to get where you felt like you had success, was there a phone call, an email, a show, a rehearsal, or some news that you're just like, this is working?
Yeah, or like, I mean, people often ask, when do you think you made it?
Yeah, was there a moment where you're like, no, this is working?
Yeah, there was. It's funny because there's many moments along the way where we all were like, this is not working, not as a band, like not as between us, but we drive like I said, we drive 30 hours to go to Thunder Bay and play to like 10 people that hated us, and we're like, God, okay, this is not working. But what we did know was like, we had a blast, like the 4 of us on stage. You start to sort of play just to each other and become tight that way, and once he did that, then I knew we were set. As far as the breakthrough, I mean, the big one, I think, probably like when we first did arena shows with Def Leppard, and because that was after we had, so Scarecrows was our first breakthrough song, went to number 5. It was like, that was kind of a cool moment, but that's just like on some chart, and you get to see the chart and you hear radio play, and that's cool. Like driving down the highway or driving in a new city and they play your song. That's always awesome. And it still gives me the chills now. Like I've never gotten tired of it. Like it's like I get to play, if we're playing and my son's in the car or my daughter, it's like they get to hear Dad's song on the radio, which is always so cool. But like, yeah, the Def Leppard tour is like, I got to see the actual, that we kind of broken through. Right. So, we did, like the Saddle Dome in Calgary, and like the big one in Rogers Arena in Vancouver, and like they're packed with rock fans, and most of them were in their seats when we played, and most of them were like, they knew the hits, right? So, and then you got to meet the Def Leppard guys. That was cool because I've always been like a fan, not a hardcore fan, but like I'm a fan of any band, that like a rock band that can go to that level and connect to that many people. You just got to respect it. And so, and then also, I mean, the first time we got on stage on that first Def Leppard arena tour, it was like our first arena show. And that was always our dream, to play arenas. We thought that's what we were meant for, and our sound was meant for. And I remember I hit the kick drum, and it was just like after we got mic'd up and stuff, and hit the kick drum, and it was just like a bomb going off in the venue. And I was just like what I remember just gave like my arm hairs. Where's my arm? There it is.
Yeah.
my arm hairs, like they stood up, and they stayed that way for like the whole show too. So, yeah, it was those moments I'll never forget. And those moments, like, no one could take away from us. You know what I mean? Like, you always have those, right? Like you did that and you earned it yourself. We didn't have any, like, no one was like pulling favors for us or whatever. Like we earned it ourselves through hard work and a ton of time,
You just find a way for those opportunities. I was just thinking, you're talking about that arena tour, that first show. What was the vibe of the band like walking into the arena or loading in? Was there's that like, okay, everyone just like act cool, everyone be cool. You do this all the time, no big deal. It's just an arena.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it was funny because Def Leppard had like, you talk about like the 3 buses or whatever that was. Like they had like, I think 20 buses or something, like, for all the different stuff, right?
It's a lot of stuff. Yeah.
And we showed up, and like, it was just us and them, like there wasn't any other bands, which was kind of cool. So they had like 20 of these buses. We show up with our van and trailer, and like, I almost felt like, well, it was a mix of pride and embarrassment, because I was proud that we could just do this. Like, we're like the little train that could, or whatever, it's like, and then one of the Def Leppard guys just happened to be like walking out to go to their bus, and he kind of like looked, like I saw him like look at us and look at the van and look at us and look at the van. And it's like, I think he was like, and he had a big smile on his face. Like, and it wasn't like a condescending smile. It was more like, I remember those days, like
you get it.
Yeah. He probably did that for like about a week, and then they probably blew up, and became megastars. But yeah.
Everybody's got that path. Everyone's got that path where it's just like you slug it out and then things work in. And I'm sure when he looks at the van and trailer, he's like, no, I get it. It's like they're out there doing it. But it is funny just thinking about just like, not say the overnight success thing, but it's just like there's these moments in music where like things are going and then there's like a big jump. And the idea where, you could be playing to 10 people in Thunder Bay. And then you fast forward a little bit and you're just like, okay, now there's way more than 10 people and we're definitely not in Thunder Bay right now. Nothing against Thunder Bay. But it's just, but it's just like, it can ramp up so quickly. And then with some bands on tour, it's like you can be playing a festival and the next night you can be playing to 15 people in a small town again. It's just, there's some serious high highs and some low lows, being in a band.
Yeah.
Kind of transitioning a little bit, because again, there's the legal part, the law part of your career and your balancing the two between being in the band and wanting to study law. How does that work, and does that freak out bandmates or like for several reasons?
Yeah, exactly. No, well, I don't know. I don't think it freaked them out ever. But, I mean, I think so. The balance part, yeah, like there was a time. So like in the last, so I've been an entertainment lawyer for, like 11 years or something. And OBS has been together for 17. So like there was like in the early days, I was just doing the band, and then I was studying. I was, doing law school, and I did a master's in law, and studying and being in a band, I feel like is a good fit. Like you can, I've always been a big advocate of that. Like you can study and get your education while playing in a band. I mean, you have to do things remotely if you're touring a lot, whatever. But I thought it was a great fit because I felt like I was, intellectually inspired, but also sort of creatively inspired on the other side. And, but then there was a time when we were touring heavy, like a lot of months of the year touring. And then the legal practice had started to blow up. And so, yeah, it was literally me in the back of the van trying to find like a quiet spot to like take phone calls, give legal advice. And then that was tough, like the phone call part, but then, reviewing contracts, drafting contracts, like that's actually, you got so much time on the road, right? Like you're driving,
you can definitely
like, even Saskatoon to Winnipeg, you got 9 hours. Like you can't imagine how many contracts I reviewed, negotiated, drafted in that 9 hours, and you start to get a bit of motion sickness if you're staring at the screen too much. But, so it was kind of a funny juxtaposition of me drafting contracts, negotiating deals while in the back of a van. And, but thankfully, I've been lucky. So the legal practice has really sort of blown up, I'd say in the last like 3 or 4 years. And, OBS has made a conscious choice to not tour as much in those years. Like we sort of step back a bit. We're not doing like the 10 months of the year on the road, sort of choosing what shows we want to play and that sort of stuff. So it's actually been like the balance has really been a lot easier to manage. And I feel super lucky for that, because if I was as busy now as I am as a lawyer back when we were touring like crazy, like it wouldn't have been able to work. It would be too much. I would have like just stressed out and had a breakdown or something, Well,
it's like one of them's going to suffer.
Mm-hmm.
When you try to, with your bandmates though, like, was there any concerns? Like, hey, Kurt, like, are you going to be able to still keep on with this? Or, cause there's lots of like, changes in personal lives, and there's just things that come up with musicians. Yeah. And when I talk to younger bands too, I do tell them like straight up, like if you're in your 20s, like your early 20s, you're going to see people stop being in bands. Mid 20s, late 20s, they're going to stop being in bands. It's like you need to keep finding people that are lifers for it, sort of thing.
Yeah, so, it's so true.
Do you ever have that conversation with your bandmates, or just say, I'm here, I'm committed?
Yeah, I think there was. I'm guessing there was some concern. I guess how could there not be, right? Like they probably thought I was going to graduate law school and then become a lawyer and then tell them to F off, right?
That's it.
But I guess I just sort of quelled those worries with action. You know what I mean? Like I've always been a big, I'm always sort of trying to push the band higher to the next level. And, I think I've very much showed my commitment along the way. Right. So, but yeah, I'm sure they had those concerns, right?
No, I think you're right on the head just saying that you showed it through action, because that's the thing. It's just like, don't show me what you're actually going to do. Don't tell me how you feel about it. Show me what you're actually going to do about it, sort of thing. Because some of these things cannot be a big deal. They cannot be a concern, or you can just say like, hey, this is what's going on. This is how I think we can deal with it. Because you said at the beginning, it's like there's a lot of commitment to being in a band, and like things can take a lot longer than musicians think. There's a lot of low lows, a lot of times where you're looking at each other and you're just like, are we doing the right thing? Is this worth it right now?
Yeah, totally.
As far as I don't want to dig into too much legal stuff because I get it. The idea of the importance of a band agreement. When do you think a band should actually have a band agreement?
I mean, honestly, and this may seem like a very lawyerly answer, but like sooner the better, because honestly, I've dealt with so many band disputes. Like they're so common, right? And even if you're not a lawyer in this industry, it's like everyone out there listening has probably heard of like the Pink Floyd fights, the Guns N' Roses fights, even now like Soundgarden is fighting with Cornell's wife, right? And there's always these things, and it's just like it can get really messy and unfortunate, right? And if they just had something in writing, they wouldn't have to deal with all that crap, right? So what I find is like a good band agreement, like instead of being like a negative thing, it's actually creates a lot of positive energy in a band, and also it improves the communication and just makes things clear, right? Like who owns the band name? How is revenue split? How are decisions made? What are the songwriting splits? Like that's important. You got to have these discussions. How is someone hired or fired? Like that's a big one. And all these things come up all the time. And in the regular world, so I'm trying to find the screen there. In the regular business world, like you wouldn't open a coffee shop with 3 other people and not have something in writing, right? You'd have something in writing, right? It's similar with the band. Like you and 3 other people are creating a partnership, right? Just like the coffee shop. So get something in writing, And again, it's not like this negative thing. To me, it's a positive thing. And it can actually open doors too. Like when I negotiate film and TV placements, for example, which happen all the time and are great money generators for bands. The first thing that the music supervisor asks is like, can one person in the band sign off on this? And without a band agreement, like you can't, you're technically a partnership. You're all equal. You have equal splits of everything without something in writing. So if I tell the supervisor no, that they don't have something in writing, they'll just move on to the next song, right? And that could have been like a $50,000 payday or something, right? Or more
than zero, yeah. And you just didn't get it. No, I wanted to ask that because there's the music humor part of it. It's like with you, the drummer in the band that also has the legal background. How do you approach that and say, hey, I think we should get a band agreement? Because like not everyone's cool with contracts and stuff like that. I agree 100% they're important, and it can add a lot of clarity and positivity to what's going on running your band as a business. But from your perspective, like, are you wearing your lawyer hat, or are you wearing your drummer musician hat when you're talking about a band agreement?
Yeah, I'm sure people probably picture like I'm trying to like sneak in all these contracts to my bandmates. Like, hey, I was fortunate. We were fortunate. I mean, OBS has always been like a equal split across the board sort of band, right? On the songwriting, on all the revenues. And that's not, we don't keep that a secret. I mean, that's how we've always written, we all live together. We all wrote the songs together. All of us bring in guitar ideas. Like we'll all bring in riffs, and that's kind of where it starts. And, we bring in lyric ideas. And so that made it easy, right? Like we could just do an equal splits. And I find that it'd be different if I was like, not contributing but then asking for an equal split, or as the lawyer in the band was trying to ask for like an unfair split or something like that. But it was always pretty easy in that way. But yeah, I mean, it's like, I think in a lot of ways, well, I know there's been many ways that along the way I've saved our asses from bad contracts that have been sent our way, of course. And so that's always the nice benefit to having the legal knowledge being in a band, right?
If there is such a thing, what is typically in a bad contract?
Well, it really depends. I mean, but what I'm finding a lot of these days, like in the last year, a lot of these things, it's like it's not so much, well, I guess it is what's in the contract, but who's offering the contract. Like there's a lot of sketchy people in the music biz. And I always temper that by saying there's some amazing, like some of the most intelligent, thoughtful, generous, kind people I've ever met in my life, and brilliant are in the music biz, you know, like geniuses walk among us in the industry. And that's probably like 50, well, I'd say about 50-50. The split is great people that are amazing, and then sharks, you know? So you got a 50-50 chance here. So tread carefully. But so I feel like the shark type people offer these deals where they're like, they want to own the record, or they whatever, or they want you to pay them a monthly fee to try to like, that's a big common thing, Mike. I'd say these monthly fees to like, yeah, I'll shop you. I'll promise you the moon. I'll get you film and TV placements, or I'll get you a record deal. You just got to pay me $500 a month, or a lot of times it's way more. But I guess that's one example, Mike, is I've seen so many contracts lately where it's like, just start paying us $1,000 a month, and we're going to like name drop all these people that we can hook you up with. And because artists are desperate to break it to the next level, they'll pay it. And it's just like that. It's like that carrot being dangled in front, right? That's a red flag. So I guess what I would say to anyone listening, it's like, just do your research, do your due diligence on whoever's offering that contract, and always get it reviewed by a lawyer. Like, because some contracts, even if they're not like sketchy, there could be stuff in there that is sketchy, and the person offering it doesn't even know that, right? Like, they may not be trying to be sketchy, but the contract could still be sketchy, you know?
Well, there's stuff in there could be negotiable. You know, they've pushed it at one side to pull it back a little bit. There's that can be in there too. But 100% get someone knowledgeable to look over it. The idea that I lost my train of thought there. Something about the contracts about what were we talking about? Things that are in there that are bad. Lost my train of thought.
Oh, like monthly fees, or like
monthly fees. The idea that like there's lots of people that can impress you out of the gate. And we talked about like, show us through actions. The good people that I've met in this business that are management or agents, or it's like, they'll kind of show you, they'll make a couple connections because they're kind of sticking their neck out a little bit, being like, no, I believe in what these people are doing. I think they're good musicians, a good band. And they can create a couple of connections first. They're not going to use that gatekeeper approach. Like, I'm not going to do anything until you sign this contract. We're not doing anything until you sign this contract. It's like, that to me is a massive red flag. Because the good people in the business I've met, they're like, oh, you need so-and-so's email or phone number. Here you go. You know, tell them I gave it to you in case they're asking. So it's like, that's one of those red flags. The other one is extreme amounts of pressure and time restraints. It's like, oh, we need this done by the end of the week. It's like, do we really?
I get this all the time. It's so sketchy. You're right. It's like, I'll get sent a 20-page record deal, and they're like, we need this. Like, can you review it? Can you review it tonight? And like, we have to sign it tomorrow. I'm just like use your common sense. Like, that is not how the business actually operates. You're right. That pressure is never a good sign. You know, you shouldn't be pressured into signing anything, you know?
Yeah. In music, it's like, you're generally always 6 months, 12 months out from what you're actually going to be doing. So thinking that contract needs to get signed. The only contracts that I'd say have a little bit of urgency is like, if you're
film and TV,
film and TV and for shows, for opening slots, where it's just like, they want to make sure they can go through, because sometimes there's assets for the show or the tour and stuff like that. They want to make sure everyone's on board, because it's not good enough to just say, yeah, sure, we'll do the 30-date tour over 45 days. It's like, they do want something in writing before they start making up all the ad mats and everything. So but that's one of the red flags, when people have this weird sense of urgency to do something, and you're just like, no, we don't need to. We can take a second to figure this out. As far as, to kind of backtrack, we talked about it briefly before we started. A musician that's 16 years old right now, kind of looking at, because like both of us, we saw Napster, we saw CDs come and go. We saw the rise of streaming. So someone that's getting into music these days in late teens, early 20s, what are your thoughts on where the music industry is right now, as far as a source of income and career path, and where you think it's going?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think what I've found in the last year, like since the pandemic, in terms of like the big deals that I've negotiated, like, and I've done some 7-figure deals where the artists, like once we put pen to paper, like they were millionaires. They all were TikTok related. And like full disclosure, I'm not on TikTok. I have no desire to be on TikTok, but I'm not a 20-year-old musician, right? Like, so, and I could get into how all the things I think are horrible about TikTok and how it's disposable and fleeting and kind of tacky and not like all that stuff, right? Like to me, and like it's not even full songs. It's just like people now are saying, don't even write full songs, just write little hooks. And it's like, what? No, like I need songs. Like I'm old school. But what I would say to artists is like, if you're young and trying to break through, like look into TikTok because it's really massive, and that's all the major labels are looking for. Like I get emails every week from the U.S. major labels, and they're like, "Hey, who's blowing up next?" Like they ask me, and they're just looking at TikTok, right? But what I would say, just to be positive in terms of that, is like the clients that I have had that have blown up on TikTok, the common thread is that they all were actually quite authentic and true to themselves, right? Like it's not like they're going on there trying to be someone they're not, because I mean the masses are asses, but they also, people can sense authenticity, right? Like in the world we live in today, people crave authenticity because we sort of live in an inauthentic world, right? So people want the real deal, and they can see it. At least most of them can. So get into TikTok. I mean, try it out. See if it's for you. Maybe it's not. And again, it's not for me. So I don't blame you if you say this is BS, Kurt. Like I'm just going to write killer songs and try to break that way. And I'm going to say, yes, do that. Like that's, but then find a way to get that your voice, find a way to show your authenticity to the world. Maybe it's, you do some cool stuff on YouTube. I don't know. Don't, like the medium is important, like how you get your stuff out there is important. It always has been, right? Even in the golden era of CDs or vinyl or tapes. I mean, you had to go through this crazy, as you mentioned, there's gatekeepers and there's a bottleneck. You had to kind of sell your soul to get a major label deal back then. In a lot of ways, you're more empowered now than ever before, right? Like, so a couple of my clients blew up in the last year through TikTok. They didn't have to like sell their soul to get a major label deal. They just used this app to connect, and then the labels came interested, and then the labels came with a shit ton of money, and and then the artist didn't have to give up everything like they did in the past, right? Like in those old major label deals, whether you're Motley Crue or whoever, you had to give up like 90%, right? So it's better now in a lot of ways.
You mentioned about authenticity, and it's like, when I was coming up, it was always about, it's a great song. You need a great song. It's all about the song. And I agree with that. Like it's definitely helps, but there was so much trying to just get that great song for the artist or the band, but It kind of didn't come from the band sometimes. And like, I thought that was a bit of an issue, because if you start stripping away some of these, parts of the team, it's like, what happens to that band or artist if they don't have access to these songs? When you talk about authenticity, it's like, and the way we are these days with social media, with TikTok or with Instagram or with Twitter, it's like you find these platforms where what you like to do and how you like to present yourself comes natural. And so you can keep cranking out content and not need to look outside for, like, you can always bring out those outside influences, but an artist that gets how these platforms work, where they can keep putting out, songs or clips or chats or polls or whatever it is that works, that brings the community together. It's like, that's how you win these days. Like,
yeah, 100%.
And rant on that, but authenticity, I think that really is the key these days. And you're saying it's like the public can see through that. They know when someone's being, insincere or fake about it. But that being said too, there's a few artists that I love where I'm just like, I know it's a bit of a gimmick, but it's, it's what they're doing, and it's good and it works.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just trying to think. So the idea, if you're starting it these days, it's like, learn the platforms. One thing you did touch on too, but artists having more power and control these days. I agree. Like if we were to go back 20 years and know that this and an internet connection, you could build a career in music or an entertainment with it. You can make movies with these things, basically. Like,
yeah.
it just gets down to excuses sometimes that I
Yeah.
hear when people can't do things, and you're just like, you actually don't, not to say you don't need that much money, because like we could probably talk for another year about how much money can go into to bands and music and just getting things going, but like you work with what you got sometimes, and it just
Well, yeah.
ahead.
So it's right. Sorry, not Mike.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you're right. Like, so one client of mine, have you heard of Lubalin? Like, he's a comedian out of Montreal, and
Name's
he blew.
familiar.
So he blew up by this whole series of videos he made called like random internet drama. So like he would take Facebook arguments and then take the comments and make a song out of it, you know. And he did one with Jimmy Kimmel or Fallon, I forget which one. But you know, he blew up. Like, so he just started making these videos himself. It took a time, but like it didn't cost him much. And then he went from, when he and I started working together, he had like 400 followers. Now he's up to like millions, and he's like making a decent living off it. And it didn't cost him much, right? Whereas, you know, when I was young, in a young band, you know, we'd have to spend, you know, 20 grand to get a decent video, and we'd like send out press kits that were like actual with 8x10 glossy photos, and like put the stupid booklet together that like, so here's One Bad Son. I remember making these and sending them out to venues, being like, book us. And each package cost like $10 to make, because you had the 8x10 and the bio, like this little booklet, and it was the dumbest thing ever. And we'd send out like 200 of those, and you do the math. Like, so you're right. Like, you know, these days it is a lot easier in some ways, but maybe it's also people feel disconnected also. I mean, we live in an interesting time where we're sort of like this digital world. I think there's a real disconnect from reality, and from what connects us as humans. But I think that's where music comes in, right? The right song, I feel like, can connect to like enemies and make them, you know, see eye to eye almost. So music is always the magic, right?
The idea of there's so many, when you're talking, there's just so many things I want to touch on. The idea that if you're an artist these days, because when you mentioned putting together packages to send those out to venues, you probably sent them out to labels, you probably sent them out to the idea that like, do you feel artists and bands just do like you do your thing, and people will start noticing it, and then you can kind of work it from there? Because there's a lot of bands that are still thinking you should be submitting stuff to labels and management. Like, how do you feel about that?
I find that by and large, like, labels aren't gonna be interested until you start doing something on, it'll be TikTok, Spotify, YouTube, like one of those, you know. So, you know, sending them a package in the mail, it's just not going to work. You know, like, everyone's busy. I mean, yeah, I think you got to create your own hype, and then they come, then they want you. The labels want you once you don't need them, right? That's the irony.
Yeah, it's like it almost feel like some bands and artists think they're gonna like trick them, like they're gonna send them something and then realize like, oh, this is the best thing. It's like, no, proof of concept. Show them that it's working already, and then they'll see. If you I think the story was Good Charlotte, like back in the MySpace days, where they were playing one of their hometown venues, and they had like a lineup around the block, and the venue owner like called someone, their industry friends, and like, you have to come down here. I don't know who this band is, but like, everybody's here, and I don't know what's going on. There's a bunch of screaming girls here, and we need to figure out what's going on. So that proof of concept, whatever it is, it was working. And the idea these days too, it's like, you say yourself, you're not on TikTok. I'm not really on TikTok, but the idea where if something's got traction there and it's got eyeballs and ears on it, there's probably something about it. You know, there's a market, and there's a group or demographic for it. So who are we to say like, oh, I don't think this is good, or if I think this is great, but it's already showing that it's doing really well. So yeah, just with bands being like, no, like, start building it. Don't go, you know, on your knees begging everybody for help if you can't help yourself in the first place.
No, I love it. If you build it, they will come. You know, like that really is, you know, and I can speak to that personally with One Bad Son. Like, in the early days, I thought we'd just like get a record deal because they'd see the potential. Well, not really. That doesn't often happen, right? Like, the labels came to us when we had well, we had 3 hit singles recorded. So we had them. He's like, here's songs we think are hits, and listen, like, oh, they sound like hits, and then they signed us, right? But that took us a lifetime of experiences, and then 8 years as a band to get there, right? But until that point, no one gave a shit in terms of labels, right? And even fans did. We didn't have fans until we wrote hits. Like, that's just how it is, right? I mean, we had small hardcore fans. It's a very hardcore small fan base, consisting of a lot of friends and family. But yeah, good. So as you said at the outset, good songs. They do the talking and the walking, right? Like, everything else is just hype, but it comes down to great songs. Same with TikTok and all that stuff. It's like, again, great songs will connect with people. Whether you and I like the song or not on TikTok, well, that doesn't matter. If 1 million people like it, then there's something happening there, right?
There's something that got legs, got traction. I've got 2 more questions.
Yeah.
The idea, we've got our entertainment lawyers, we've got our managers or management teams, and we have our booking agents. How would you rank those? Unbiasedly, how would you rank those as far as like building your team out? As far as importance.
Importance or in timing?
Either or, if you see a different perspective on it.
Well, I mean, I don't know if I'll rank them, because that'll just my manager clients and my booking agent clients and friends will just be like, they'll just start
emails blowing up,
shooting me daggers, because everyone does different stuff, right? Like, I would say this. So the difference between them, like, so your agent, it's crucial, and they're kind of like, they're almost like car salesmen. Like they got to get you, they got to sell the gig, and that's great. You want that. You want someone pushing you to sell the gig and up the guarantee and all that stuff. There's great agents. There's shitty agents. You go find the great ones. Managers are the ones that kind of quarterback everything in your career. So you want to find someone who understands the whole scope of the industry. And then I guess, like, to me, what separates a good entertainment lawyer from everyone else, label, manager, agent, is like, the lawyer is not beholden to anyone except you. Like, a manager might, if you're getting a gig offer or a record deal offer, the higher the money going to you, the better the manager's commission is. So, they may have a bias towards, like, let's go for higher advance, but maybe the other terms in the deal aren't as good or whatever, right? A good manager shouldn't do that, but they should consider the artist first. But for lawyers, and we're also held to the higher standard of the law society in whatever province we're in. So we have to have our client's best interest at heart, or we get disbarred, So again, when I'm negotiating a record deal for an artist, like, I'm just looking at what is the best contract I can get for my artist. And sometimes I've had managers kind of be like, well, let's just push for a higher advance and let's get a crappier royalty on the back end, but let's get a higher advance. And I'm like, well, no, it's better for the artist in the long term to get a better royalty in the long run, but it's going to mean less commission for you as manager right now. So I think that's just where, a good entertainment lawyer is just like, they're there, like, they're your last line of defense. You know what I mean? And sometimes there's been situations where managers and labels both F over an artist, and their last line of defense is their lawyer, right? And I'm not trying to hype what I do too much, but, like, it's just like, there is, like, I feel that I'm closer with so many of my clients than like a lot of clients call me, and like, I've been through a lot of crap too with my, like, clients of mine have been through, like, the ringer, and I've been there for them the whole way, like, so I've got a really close bond with a lot of clients, and a lot of it's just trust and, always having their best interest at heart. So, that's sort of like, it's our job to make sure that it doesn't matter what everyone else around you is saying, that I have to give you legal advice that's going to be the best for your career. Doesn't matter what the hype is on other things or whatever. It's like, here's what this contract needs to have. And there you go.
Yeah, no, I wasn't trying to put you on the spot, but yeah, I find with legal advice, they're not trying to sell people a bridge. They're not trying to just go like, hey, this is something we can do. It's like, here, this is what I think would be the best for you. Looking at what both parties are bringing, because you did touch on it as well. Agents, management, like, make sure there's no conflicts of interest going on all over the place. with any of these agreements and stuff. And because, yeah, it does make sense for somebody, if they are making a percentage off something, to just push as much money to that. Because I've heard of stories, I'm sure you have too. I've heard of stories where like things have fallen apart because not enough money was kind of pushed into the middle so someone could take their percentage off of it. And it really kind of railroaded someone's career because it stopped them from being able to move forward. So just make sure everyone's got that in mind. We talked about it briefly beginning too. It's like people having the artist's best interest in mind. They are the product at the end of the day. You know.
Well, and you're in. Sorry, go ahead. And yeah, sorry, you cut out there. And like I've had times where artists, like their team, management, labels push them to tour like crazy, and I can tell that they're like physically, mentally not well. And I'll step in and be like, no, this is it. Like, this is it, you know, because again, it's that like client solicitor privilege. Like as a lawyer, I can just come in and just be like, nope, we're done with this. Like we're taking a break off the road because the artist can't handle it. And everyone else on the money train just wants it to keep rolling. Right.
That is an awful truth in the entertainment industry. The idea, just get the, get the cattle out there working. And it's not good for anybody. Last question. I know you got to go. Last question. Bands you'd love to tour with, festival bands you'd love to share the stage with. Just a few off the top of your head, because we're getting back to shows here, hopefully sooner than later. Yeah,
oh, totally. Pearl Jam is the reason like I became a musician. Like, talk about in high school, picked up the drumsticks late. It was because of Pearl Jam. Like they just changed my life, So playing opening for Eddie and the guys would be like, I probably would like, I'm usually pretty cool in terms of like not showing how much of a fanboy I am for certain bands, but with Pearl Jam, I'd just be like doing the We're Not Worthy Wayne's World thing. Soundgarden, if I could make Cornell come back, they're a huge influence on me.
Did you ever get to see them?
Saw Audio Slave like at Lollapalooza with Jane's Addiction. That was awesome, but never Soundgarden, and then maybe someone like, I'm a huge Bob Dylan fan, but like that wouldn't be, OBS. I wouldn't see opening for Bob Dylan, but I'd like to meet Bob Dylan someday. That'd be great.
Well, you never know. You might cross paths somewhere. I can't thank you enough for coming on the show tonight. I think this is probably a good place to wrap things up. Not just because, unfortunately, I got a Leafs game in the back of my mind right now. Oh, it's been painful the last few days. Anything else you'd like to add or mention before we sign off?
Honestly, just like if any listener out there has questions or whatever, just look me up, lawyerdrummer.com. I get so many messages there every day and I respond to them. Or just hit me up on Instagram, just Lawyer Drummer, and shoot me a message, like whatever. If you have questions, like I actually get a lot of joy out of helping out fellow musicians because I didn't have that help when I was starting up, so I didn't have answers to my questions, and now I'm happy to give that to people. Right. So it makes me feel good.
It's a unique perspective because you can see both sides of the fence sort of thing with the musicians thinking and also like what the industry is thinking. So sage advice I'm sure you have for bands and artists. All right.
Thank you, Mike.
I will put the link to your website in the details below for watching the replay on YouTube. Thanks again for everybody that took part in the chat. We'll go through later and answer some of those questions that are in there. Once again, my name is Mike Langford. This has been DearBands Live. And again, thanks to our guest, Kurt Dahl.
Thank you, Mike. It's been an honor, man.
All right. Sounds good. It's our time. Talk to you later.